Given what we recently learned about the 7 shifting serpent fighting style that Sertology trained Skirk in, all logic would say that this power of Dainsleif's we see him use is some sort of abyss mimicry of Pyro, right? But what if it's not? Because while Sertology and Dainsleif were trained in the Conrian fighting style called Black Serpent Blade Work, the 7 shifting serpent is more Sertology's thing. He incorporated an old Conrian party trick into his combat style for the sake of disguising abyssal power. Maybe there's still an argument for the sake of Hoyo going the 7 shifting serpent route with Dainn, since he does talk about defying this world with a power from beyond in the Travail teaser. And it is true that a power from beyond often refers to the abyss. However, the twins themselves are also a power from beyond. I also just don't think it makes any sense for Dainn to be using abyssal power. Like, I don't know what this gobbledygook is, but I'm not sure if it's actually meant to represent forbidden knowledge or the abyss. Because Dainsleif's whole thing for the last 500 years has been fighting against the Abyss Order and abyssal forces. The summary of Dainsleif's combat abilities that they give you when he's added to your team as a summon talks about how he is proficient in taking out structures such as the abyss pylons and everything. Back in the Chasm, Dainsleif even talked about how Conrian technology and abyss power are all just tricks to him. So would it really make any sense for him to be using abyss power disguised as pyro? Trying to repel the abyss by adding more abyss to the equation just kind of sounds like attempting to put out a fire by pouring more fire onto it. Dainsleif must be using a force that is capable of cleansing the abyss. Interestingly enough, in the new Song of the Welkin Moon trailer, we see this new character, Flynn's, being attacked by the Wild Hunt, a type of abyssal force present in Nod Cry. And he burns away the dark energy with this Memoria blue fire. That's actually electro, apparently, which undeniably reminds me of the ghostly blue fire we have seen Dainn summon. So my theory is that they are kind of the same. Or at least similar. Officially, all we really have to go on in terms of Dainsleif's power is the element listed on the website and the appearance it takes on. When it comes to the color scheme and effects, Dainsleif's abilities are definitely unique in their appearance. The best way I can really think of to describe it in simple terms would be, it kind of looks like blue fire, but there are shadows mixed in amongst the light. I think in this shot from Requiem of Echoing Depths, the blue light kind of looks like crescent moons. You can see the Black Serpent Bladework style come through, and techniques like this one that sweeps through enemies with a serpent's tail. Dainn always seems to summon this element from his corrupted arm, and when he does, the blue veins throughout the corrupted parts of his body glow with the same sort of blue that we have seen from petrified and withered trees. There is one difference when it comes to Dainsleif's element compared to the brief shots of Flynn's in the trailer, and it is that Dainn's ability has these dark shadows around it. However, Arlecchino's special flames also have shadows, and her powers are a curse from the Crimson Moon. And that's what this is all about. The moons! Everything is about the moons! As I said, the element Flynn's actually uses is electro, and we can kind of see how the energy surrounding the little flame in his hand has an electricity appearance to it. However, we've got the spooky blue flame in the lantern, and this also just looks like fiery flavored electro. Furthermore, based on the way Lunar Charged works, it would seem that the region-based mechanics surrounding these lunar powers replaces existing elemental reactions under certain conditions. And this kind of makes me wonder if, at its base, this unique power that is related to the moons and predates the 7 elements, is ultimately something that can mirror and mimic other forces much like the Abyss tends to. There are actually many reasons I think this, and we will explore that on a deeper level later on in the video. So, with the Black Watchtower and the lantern present in Flynn's art and trailer appearance, he is clearly associated with the Lightkeepers faction. Side note, this Black Watchtower was mentioned way back in the Chasm when Zhiqiong was experiencing visions from exposure to the oozing secretions. Like, damn, Hoyo's got plans. The lore surrounding the Long Night's Oath artifact set actually gives us a decent amount of context surrounding the Lightkeepers. This set tells the story of the first Torch Forger, who borrowed the power of frost moonlight from the priestess of the Moon Children, and used it to banish the forces of the Abyss. The Lightkeepers are a faction founded by the first Torch Forger that hold up this mantle of protection against the Abyss forces, which is exactly what we see Flynn's doing in the trailer. The Frost Moon Scions gain their power from the Moon Goddess, though, so it would be very ironic to imply Dainsleif receives a power associated with any sort of god. I mean, this guy literally avoids associating with the subjects of the Seven.
イアンサ、彼女の名前は覚えた。七神の民と関わるときは感情移入しない。これが俺の信条だ。
Let alone any gods themselves. Though, maybe the Conrians view the moons differently, since they do predate Celestia. The people of the Crimson Moon dynasty worshipped a moon, after all. There's another instance of blue fire within Genshin that I want to talk about for this theory, and it's something that happened in the manga. Dottore had an underling who was an incredibly annoying and small man named Krups. After this guy inevitably let the Harbinger down, Krups naturally became the subject of one of Dottore's experiments. Dottore turned him into some sort of monster made out of armor being held together by blue fire. When it comes to Dottore, we know he has been looking into the moons as one of his major projects, so I do not think it's a reach to assume this creation came about as a result of that research. Anyway, yeah, he just kind of makes this abomination, and then he's like, "Off you go, my child. Feel free to go and do whatever, just don't be near me." Later on, Jean and Amber end up confronting this creation, and even after Jean tears it to pieces, the whole thing just reassembles itself. I was wondering if it's able to do this by resetting itself, by rewinding the time on itself. And that's one of the main things that I want you to remember, so put a pin in that for now. While on the subject of the manga, I also want to stress just how much focus so many of these panels put on the moon. We get all of these shots of the moon, and all of them contain this floating island which is talked about as if it is Celestia. Except this doesn't look like Celestia. It's also shown with dragons flying around it. Since Kukulkan appears in the Dragonspine mural room because he gave the people of Salvindagnir the power of phlogiston weaving, it seems like this floating island from these murals was never Celestia. This island was always something more aligned with the dragons. Like the lunar abilities practiced in Nodcry, phlogiston wielding is something that predates the seven elements. Phlogiston is the basis for the seven elements, so naturally it came first. With how Hoyo uses color theory in their lore, blue is often associated with consciousness and memory. We see this on Teyvat with the blue Irminsul glow as well as the primordial sea. The crystal within the celestial nails matches this color scheme too. The yokai staff is also interesting here, because not only does it have a blue flame on it, but also this little yokai was a storyteller. Stories can be a very important way to preserve and pass on our memories of certain events and people. Our own personal memories, our consciousness, and everything we are could also be considered our own story. Teyvat's story is contained within Irminsul, which technically contains all of the time in Teyvat in the form of memory. The past is in the memories contained within the ley lines, and the future is in the memories contained within the constellations in the false sky. I think this is all worth considering in the context of Dainsleif, because Dainn's brother is the time guy amongst the five sinners. If each of these sinners has a parallel among the heavenly principles and their shades, Vedrfolnir is their Istaroth. The reason Dainsleif has managed to avoid the bodily deterioration which affects other immortal Conrians, such as Capitano, is because he has a ring given to him by his brother, and this ring constantly resets the state of Dain's body. Remember that thing I wanted you to remember about Dotore's creation? Considering the title of Bowkeeper, Dainn might be drawing on some sort of power from Irminsul and the ley lines. Except, when it comes to this thought, I also think there's a good chance that the Frost Moonlight may actually have some sort of direct connection to the blue Irminsul glow. Like if the iridescent moon is connected to the iridescent inscriptions and phlogiston wielding, then perhaps the Frost Moonlight has some sort of relation to Irminsul and the shaping of memory. Something else that has allowed me to draw connections between the Frost Moon and memories within Irminsul is Honkai Star Rail lore. First, just a little bit of background in terms of how I arrived here. I've actually been looking into the possibility of Dainsleif using Frost Moon powers for months now, and it all started out as a way to try and understand Cryo Skirk. Now that we know about how Skirk's powers work, this is no longer relevant to her, but I do still think it can apply to Dainsleif, because I really don't think he is using abyssal powers to cleanse the abyss. While I was thinking about non-vision related powers coming from a Frost Moon, I couldn't stop thinking about Honkai Star Rail lore surrounding the Path of Remembrance, a path associated with preserving time through memory. You know, just like how Irminsul does. There seems to be a lot of association drawn between remembrance and the ice element. The path resonance and blessings for remembrance within the simulated universe are associated with the ice element and freeze status. Within the Star Rail universe, there's a substance called Memoria that is linked to the remembrance path, and according to March 7th, condensing Memoria creates something called six-phased ice, which I am pretty sure is a variation of the same kind of stuff Primo Gems are made of. It's also worth noting that Memoria has a parallel on Teyvat in the form of primordial seawater. The primordial sea and phlogiston seem to be the two main primal sources of life, energy, and power on Teyvat. The way I see it, phlogiston is the substance that comes from the light realm, while the primordial sea is closer in nature to the void realm or abyss, while still being able to coexist with the human and light realms. So, like, several months ago, I was thinking about all of this and wondering, what if this is actually some sort of memory-based frostfire that actually comes from the moons? Since the moons are implied to be these primeval entities that have always watched over Teyvat, even before the arrival of Primordial One, maybe relying on moon powers wouldn't be considered as icky, cringe, and gross as relying on powers associated with the gods of Celestia. That's not a god, that's a dragon! I've long since assumed that Dain's ability has something to do with this power of dreams and memory that is related to the Dendro element and Irminsul. As we addressed earlier, the transformed parts of Dain's body have blue light shining out of them in certain areas, just like what we see with Irminsul and extensions of it. The ring that he has is probably resetting him to a previous physical state by rewinding the time on his body to a state it remembers being in at some point before. Again, this blue more often than not means we are dealing with memories or consciousness. That's why I call it Memoria Blue, and I want you to think of objects or bodies as something that can exist in a state of memory as well. For instance, another case of ghostly blue fire within the Hoyoverse that comes to mind is Anaxa's alchemy. Anaxa is a Honkai Star Rail character from a world that is entirely composed of Memoria, and his alchemy is based on this fact that all things come from the same source and have the same composition. Therefore, his alchemy is just reshaping Memoria. So the fire is Memoria Blue because it is composed of memories. Anaxa's ultimate is also a tree of wisdom that looks so much like Irminsul, please. He's such a wonderful little lore sponge. I think looking at the lunar powers from an alchemical perspective is actually pretty interesting when you consider how lunar charged works. If we are replacing the elemental reactions with alternate versions, then this power might have transformative or transmuting elements to it. The thing about Memoria is that it's a substance associated with consciousness and dreams that will mirror thoughts and emotions. This mimicry element is actually something it has in common with how the Abyss behaves. In Skirk's dialogue, she refers to the Abyss as the world's shadow, which is rather consistent with what we have learned about the Abyss, especially during our recent experiences in Natlan. The Abyss harvests memories from the ley lines and creates dark versions of them. The seven-shifting serpent mimics the elements to disguise itself. So if the lunar powers kind of behave like Memoria, like a mirror, and have the ability to mimic other forces, then they might work similarly to the seven-shifting serpent in a way. They might be the perfect thing to pick up if you're used to Conrian techniques based around the Abyss. If the Frost Moon does have a connection to Irminsul and Memory, then this could be at least partially why they've given the playable Frost Moon Scion Lauma a Dendrovision instead of a Cryovision. I'd also like to point out that Lauma is a deer, and in Norse mythology, Dainn just so happens to be a deer. So this is just kind of funny in the context of trying to prove Dainn uses Frost Moon powers. With how Irminsul and the ley lines work, the title of Bowkeeper implies that Dainn is some sort of keeper of memories. Something that was definitely validated by how the Abyss Order used him for his memories in the Archon quest, A Space and Time for You. However, between the Irminsul energy emitting from parts of his body, and the fact that he narrates all of the collective miscellany videos and knows so many things about all of the characters, it all gets sus. The sheer amount of access he's clearly had to the memories of Teyvat is sus. Just what exactly does it mean to be the Bowkeeper? It seems like my thing whenever a major trailer drops is just going to be latching on to the most specific thing possible and writing a weird theory about it. Also, that's not a god, it's a dragon, is my new mantra, truly. It was about time for me to release another Genshin video, and I just didn't know exactly what I wanted to talk about until Hoyo dropped that Song of the Welkin Moon teaser on me. I just have my very specific things that I am heavily interested in, and I have to follow those desires to some extent, otherwise I get way too bored with a project. Dainsleif is always one of my interests, and others right now include dragons, the witches, Conrians, Anaxa, and Hoyo's obsession with the power of memory. So those are the things I'll be talking about. I'm so glad I finally got to write a Dainsleif theory. He's truly one of my eternal top Hoyo faves. Dainn's got it all. The drip, the cake, the Kenjiro Tsuda voiceover in Japanese, the unparalleled divorced man energy. But I only get to see him once a year, and he hasn't really been the main focus of the quest since Requiem of Echoing Depths. I'm starved! I need more of him! Anyway, if you made it all the way to this point, thank you for watching! Please consider leaving a like and comment to help with the engagement, and if you enjoyed the video, maybe subscribe for more. I've also got a Patreon that starts off at $1 a month as a way to offer optional financial support that helps further my ability to make content. With all of that said, hopefully I'll see you next time.